Welcome to this week's video blog. My name is Rob Meagher. I'm co-founder of the Center for Human Awakening along with Richard Harvey. Richard continues to take a break, and so I'll continue to offer a reading from one of Richard's books. This week, From Your Essential Self. And the title of this reading is Crisis. Crisis comes about through the action of forces beyond our control that may defeat us utterly and propel even the most unlikely of us into inner work. Whereas dissatisfaction usually contains an element of choice, crisis generates an acute feeling of urgency. It is as if something is forcibly urging us toward change. Crisis occurs in dramatic, painful, and often unexpected ways, such as mental breakdown, the breakup of a relationship, the loss of a career, the death of a loved one, serious physical illness, or spiritual descent. The traumatic effects include shock, profound apathy, depression, suicidal thoughts, unpredictability, or extreme shifts in personality and behavior. Crisis shatters our complacency, disrupts the routine of our lives, and plunges us into uncertainty, confusion, and bewilderment. When the outer fabric has collapsed, crisis propels us deeply within because there is nowhere else to go. When a person responds to crisis by simply taking medication or fighting against it, they deny the inner calling to self-exploration. When they listen to the call, their crisis turns into an opportunity. In inner work, feelings and experience may be uncontained and transparent. There is little or no gap between feeling and expression. Crisis is not always personal. It may be spiritual. When it is, the veil between ourselves and others turns out to be surprisingly thin. Sometimes entirely unbidden and with no personal preparation, we are plunged into an awareness of our interconnectedness and experience of spontaneous awakening. My early personal inner work was essentially a period of self-absorption. I was on a journey of self-discovery and personal change. From my perspective, those people who were concerned with the terrible state of the world, politically, sociologically, and ecologically, were simply projecting their unresolved personal issues onto a wider canvas. But one day, while moving into a new house, I was overcome with genuine compassion for the world and the beings that inhabited it. This feeling was tremendously powerful and came entirely unexpectedly. No one could have been more surprised than me. I experienced a crisis of heart opening and compassion that propelled me into new activities. I spent time in a peace camp on an Air Force base, read feminist literature in an attempt to understand the plight of women in Western society, and undertook a deep descent of conscience and soul searching. The experience has never left me. Through it, I expanded and became a bigger human being, and my inner work proceeded in the wider context of my appreciation of collective humanity. This experience was a spiritual descent that left me in no doubt of the reality of compassion. I touched it, tasted it, lived it, and knew that compassion is present when we are not separate, when we transcend our small sense of self We may only see the negative connections when our life falls apart. But if we can respond positively, it can be a powerful catalyst for growth and change. The decisive factor is openness. If the heart can open sufficiently, the crisis of a major breakdown propels us toward positive change. When the heart remains closed, we fall into an abyss that only intensive work on powerful emotions can liberate from us. Personal crisis is a deep call from the heart to embrace inner wisdom. This is why major breakdowns can be seen as golden opportunities for change. To view crisis, defeats, and failures as opportunities for change is a wise gift of the soul. Life is composed of negative and positive experiences ranging from the delightful to the excruciating. We never know when our lives will change in such a way that we will never be the same again. To live as if our lives will never change is foolish. To live as if our lives are in constant process of change is wise. On the path of personal and spiritual discovery, we often learn most from openly acknowledging our failures and mistakes. In a dramatic scene from the Arthurian legend, an old crone riding a decrepit, limping mule rides into King Arthur's court, where a great feast is being held. The feast is in honor of the celebrated knight Parsifal, who has tried and failed to find the Holy Grail, but has nevertheless attained a high degree of fame for his chivalry and courage. Pointing her crooked finger at Parsifal, she recounts all the embarrassing, shameful failures and misdeeds of his career, just at the point in his life when he is most admired and revered. This moment of shame puts him back in line with his life's purpose, and with renewed commitment he sets out once again to search for the Grail. Though it may be hard to see at the time, crisis works like the crone, giving us the opportunity to get back to what we need to do to further our inner unfolding. Crisis brings with it experiences of loss and suffering, the feeling of being out of control, uncomfortable shifts of reference points, and the challenge of surrendering to forces greater than our individual selves. If we can rise to meet it, crisis is the unexpected twist of fate that opens us up to the process of personal transformation. The attachment to self distinguishes the dissatisfied seeker from the seeker in crisis. The seeker in crisis is fully ready to work on herself, while the dissatisfied seeker still holds back. It is a question of commitment and resolve. The dissatisfied seeker may take months or even years to get to the place where his facade has peeled away and his sense of self is as thin and fragile as the client in crisis, whereas the seeker in crisis has already arrived. Stripped of character and attachment, she can only open to the exploration of the shelf. There is simply nowhere else to go. We can never manufacture the crisis that leads to desperation and despair. We can only ever start from where we are. Dissatisfaction or crisis may motivate us to start the inner journey, perhaps a mixture of both. Either way, they represent a call to journey to the inner world, and how we respond to the call is vital for the outcome.